The 4 killers of Forsaken are all balanced in their own way. They each offer unique gameplay to the player with their own mechanics, stats, and abilities that is completely unique to them. All 4 are balanced in their own... Okay, no, scratch that. I'm ranking the killers from worst to best, and this list ends up being surprisingly easy to lay out. In this state, or Forsaken, the killers are a little unbalanced, and this ranking will hopefully push that opinion even further. And if you'd like, comment your own ranking. I'd love to hear what others say, so time to begin. Number 4 is going to be John Doe. I'm not sure how many people would have expected this spot, but he just isn't good anymore. Regarding his stats, he is a solid 27 sprint and 9 regular speed, making him relatively quick. But his absolute biggest factor making John Doe worse is his lack of damaging abilities. He has one attack ability, which is Slash, dealing a decent 30 damage. This attack's range is pathetically short, and even with his boosted speed, it genuinely is not hard to avoid as a survivor. John Doe, unlike the other killers, has remotely no way of either directly slowing down the survivor or giving himself a burst of speed. The main downfall is how aggravating it is to catch up to a survivor close enough to hit him. In my several games of trying him out, I cannot land a Slash hit for the life of me. While this is most likely a skill issue, I did notice a severe difference in melee combat when using the other killers. The trade-off of leaving a trail of damage behind is not and never was worth it. Now, regarding the other abilities, John Doe also has a digital footprint, an attack that sets traps for a significant amount of time. This attack is decent at best and absolutely useless at worst. It sets a pretty large kill brick on the ground, and when a survivor steps on it, it gives them severe damage and slowness, as well as reveals their location. I made that seem pretty good, but it doesn't take much thought to just not step on this large black circle on the ground. Yeah, you can put it on perhaps a generator or a medkit you find on the ground, but even with this, it'll just expire anyway. If someone does happen to step on the trap, there's also a chance they're just too far away to go for, and if you're chasing someone else, it's just not going to be worth to go for them. But 404 Error is another ability, which gives you visibility of every player still alive for 4 seconds. I mean, sure, that's pretty useful, but in 99% of situations, it's no better than an ability that lets you see one player. Yeah, maybe you can detect characters if you look close enough or see where the groups are. No, I'm looking too far into this. Corrupt Energy summons a huge line of spikes emerging from the ground, which you can manually control the outcome of where they land and the angle they emerge from. Now this is pretty busted. You could do maneuvers like blocking off passages, as the spike wall serves as a blockade for a really solid 14 seconds. And hitting a player with a spike will deal pretty good damage, as well as granting John Doe speed 1, which is actually enough to sufficiently catch up to someone and deal pretty decent damage, possibly killing them on the spot. While players are relatively good at dodging the spikes, you can really outmaneuver them with the placement and make extremely strategic walls to sometimes even make a guaranteed death. But unfortunately, even with this, John Doe's letdown with the other abilities and a pretty pathetic melee still does make him, in my opinion, the worst killer in Forsaken. Number 3 is Cool Kid. Cool Kid was painful to place at number 3, but my personal experience with him have never just been as good as I've seen the media claim. His abilities are mostly all really good. He has a really solid lunge attack as well as being tied to the quickest killer with Jason. Cool Kid feels more like a death by 1,000 cuts killer with the decent damage and really quick recharges. You could become a master at Cool Kid if you're really good with movement and outmaneuvering your enemy. So his abilities go down like this. Punch does a really good 27.5 damage for a 2-second recharge, and if you can get a combo down, this ability's speed can result in a really quick death for your opponent. Corrupt Nature is a lot weaker, being a projectile attack that throws a block that you aim in front of you. The projectile goes through walls and deals pretty pathetic 15 damage. The trade-off of slowing whoever got hit by a projectile for 4 seconds and making them visible is probably worth it, but this attack is really easy to avoid. It's almost never too useful unless you get hit directly through a wall. Walk Speed Override is absolutely cracked though. It sends you dashing forward extremely quick until you hit a player, or we're dashing for at least 2 seconds. This ability is very powerful, dealing 30 damage, a burning effect, and making them highlighted to chase directly after the hit, likely used to finish them off. This further enhances Cool Kid's theme of really quick movement and short recharges in his abilities, being by far the most agile killer. Just a cooldown of 20 seconds is extremely broken in my opinion, and combined with his already quick player speed and an ability to quickly keep damaging players, leads to a near death sentence to anyone who is struck by this ability. While yes, Cool Kid missing the attack leaves him into a big disadvantage by slowing down for a minute, it usually isn't a challenge to catch back up. His last ability is Pizza Delivery, a summoning power that makes 2 minions come out of the ground and track down players moving just slightly quicker than their player speed. While the 10 damage is pretty minimal, it can be used somewhat as chip damage while also highlighting players. Everything surrounding Cool Kid is extremely based on chip damage, fast pace, and skill to outmaneuver the enemy. While being the killer who takes the most skill, I just think Cool Kid just falls short of number 2. So, number 2 is going to be Jason. This was an extremely close call between Cool Kid, but I think Jason's abilities push him over the edge. Jason is the first and free killer that is definitely the most commonly used in Forsaken. I originally expected this to be by far the lowest of the 4, but I was pleasantly surprised by his abilities actually being way better than I expected after giving the other killers a go. While the fact that Jason has pretty similar arguments to John Doe regarding his lack of way to catch up players, well, not only is Jason's speed movement quicker, but his abilities are way too damaging to not put it at number 2. His slash is a pretty decent attack, dealing a really solid 20 damage and the bleeding effect, as well as having a really quick 1.9 second cooldown. Due to his really good speed, you can land slash pretty easily if you aren't being outpaced. Next is Behead, a stronger and larger attack that also deals 20 damage. The gimmick is giving people the weakness of Helpless, preventing them from using all abilities. This is actually extremely useful in some scenarios, as well as some people's abilities are the only ones available that they can use to retreat. Despite granting you slowness afterwards, this can be both used to fend off people or stop them from perchance attacking you. Now his third ability, Gashing Wound, is also extremely good. It's hard to catch someone with this while chasing, but the best strategy is to most likely catch someone off guard for a free hit. This does a devastating 50 damage to the victim, either killing them on the spot or leaving them below 50% health. Despite the long cooldown and short range, this attack is a free huge chunk of damage onto anyone who doesn't immediately start running. His fourth ability is Raging Pace, which is a rather interesting twist to Jason's entire character. This buffs his walk speed to 19.5 but disables his ability to sprint, but Raging Pace hyper buffs all your other abilities in terms of cooldown, damage, and even extra ways to attack. The trade-off for having a speed nerf is not just these buffs, but also a way to track players and a lunge attack when using slash. You also become invincible to stuns during rage mode, and you can do up to 25 damage with slash, 35 damage with Behead, and 70 damage with Gashing Wound. Jason is the absolute damage beast of the game, and his really solid speed, reach, and 4 really useful abilities that can absolutely take down survivors is what makes him number 2. Number 1 is, well, I know this might come as a shocker, 1x. That wasn't a shock, was it? 1x is way too powerful in this meta. He has so many abilities, gimmicks, and does extreme damage. 1x is the only killer who is downright unfair in the current point of the game, and as I go through these abilities, it just sounds more and more broken. I'll start it off with the fact that 1x is the slowest killer, but guess what? That doesn't matter! I'll start it off with the slash, which is a quick 20 damage that inflicts an absolutely busted ability called Glitch Effect on the player. This glitch blocks way too much of the screen. It's way too blinding in my opinion. Mass Infection is next, the first of 2 projectile attacks he wields. This is a huge beam that horizontally goes through walls, essentially going through the whole map. This beam does a devastating 35 damage and also infects the glitch and poison effect on the player. Despite taking a couple seconds to build up, you can hit people with this from literally anywhere on the map, potentially even killing them if they're on decently low HP. It is insanely fast too, so if you don't know what's coming, it's pretty much a guaranteed hit. The second ranged ability is Entanglement, a way quicker but smaller projectile that completely pauses the survivor in place. This covers their screen and glitch pop-ups that they must clear in time to move on. This is pretty much a guaranteed hit on the player when they're entangled, dealing the original 10 damage and 20 more with a sword hit, or 35 extra using Mass Infection. This also inflicts the player with Helpless, so even if they escape the minigame, they won't have a sufficient way of escaping, so you can pull some crazy combos with these abilities. And if it wasn't good enough, the next ability is Unstable Eye. This makes every single player visible. This reason is so significant is, well, because as long as you're on the flat ground with another player, you can send either of your ranged attacks straight at them and they have no idea what is coming. So 1x can hit you anywhere on the map, anytime. But hey, don't worry, it also gives 1x blindness 3 for a few seconds, so it's harder to track players. It also gives 1x boosted speed. Guess what? There's another ability. Rejuvenate the Rotten, I think that's how you pronounce that, is a spawner that summons zombies around the map to chase down alive players if 1x didn't have enough abilities. The amount of zombies spawned based on how many players you've killed, which means if you could be down to 1 player left, you could spawn 7 zombies to hunt them down alongside you. Okay, yeah, I've gone over all the abilities. 1x is absolutely crazy and is way more unbalanced than any of the other killers. On top of his combo abilities, screen obstruction, stun, viewing through walls, hitting through walls, and ability to summon up to 7 minions to fight, 1x has the shortest cooldowns in the game. His projectiles are both under 20 seconds in cooldown. All of these aspects shoved in the one character is genuinely baffling to me. 1x is in need of one of the largest nerfs at Forsaken right now, and honestly, I wish it could happen. 1x can be insufferable to play against sometimes, and putting him at number 1 in this list was literally an automatic decision. But I suppose I should wrap it up. What did you think of my ranking? I love to hear other people's opinions. It's one of the reasons I make these videos. So that's it from me for today.